Yes. And the recording has also started. And over to you, Shabaz.
Okay, thank you very much. Welcome everybody to the Omaha Azure user group. As you can tell by my accent, I am not local to Omaha. I'm from the United Kingdom. So you can see my socials are there. I'm on Twitter, LinkedIn. I am actually a senior infrastructure consultant for a company, a Danish company, but we have a UK presence called Netcompany. I have my own YouTube channel, and I also have a blog which I regularly do content on. So my main areas of focus are EUC, the sort of endpoint management, Azure, and also Windows Virtual Desktop, which obviously brings me to the user group today. So today's session is going to be an overview of Windows Virtual Desktop. So I'm not going to go too deep dive. It's going to be two parts to my session. The first part will be more theory, PowerPoint slide deck, and then towards the end, I'll jump into my tenant and do a bit of an overview from a tenant perspective. So a little demo of an existing Windows Virtual Desktop service that I've got. Just look through some of the features and some of the configurations that you can do. So what am I going to cover in this session? So talk a bit about what is Windows Virtual Desktop for those who don't know. So go into sort of an overview of the product. We'll discuss the features. So what are some of the key features of Windows Virtual Desktop? So that'll include we'll talk about host pools, application groups. We'll talk about workspaces, FSLogics. And then what I'd like to do is move across to looking at some WVD use cases and the architecture. So that's probably the wider ecosystem of Azure and how it integrates with Windows Virtual Desktop. And I said I'll finish off with a little demo. I'm not going to deploy anything live. It's too late in the day for me to do anything like that. But I will just go through the actual tenancy in WVD and look at host pools and some of the session hosts, etc. So what is Windows Virtual Desktop? Essentially, it's Microsoft hosted VDI. So when we think of VDI, traditionally, we might think of Citrix, or we might think of Microsoft RDS on premises. And even to maybe a lesser extent, we might think about VMware Horizon. All WVDs, it's the same sort of service. It's a VDI service, but it's hosted in Microsoft Cloud, which in this case is Azure. It's multi-session Windows 10 deployment. So WVD is I believe it's the only VDI service that supports multi-session Windows 10. So if you think of traditional RDS, you tend to have server OS, be it traditionally or older versions of Server 2008, 2012 R2, and more recently 2016 and 2019. It doesn't have, you can't do Windows 10 with any other VDI. Even Citrix, like multi-session, doesn't support Windows 10. So WVD is the first VDI platform and the only one I believe that supports multi-session Windows 10. You can also do application virtualization. So again, very similar to other VDI products, really. Nothing different there. You can publish applications and you can host them within your WVD tenancy. Instead of having them as part of your image, you can put them and publish them so users can only access specific applications. It reduces the management. Now, if you think about, again, a traditional on-premises VDI solution, there's a lot to it, not only the hardware, but also the key services within VDI. So we think about the web access, first of all. The web access service with Windows Virtual Desktop, it lets users access the virtual desktop via a compatible web browser that supports HTML5. Because it's hosted in Azure, that the management of that is taken away. You don't, as the admin, you don't have to worry about that. Whereas traditionally on premises, you do still have to manage that. So it reduces the web access management. If we're talking about the gateway service in traditional RDS that you would have on premises, that's sort of the remote connection gateway service, which connects remote users into Windows Virtual Desktop, so from any sort of internet connected device. Again, because it's hosted in Microsoft Cloud, you do not see that. You don't have to manage the gateway service. It's all done by Microsoft. So again, another service that's taken away by Microsoft and managed by them. Connection broker as well, which is probably one of the most key sort of services within Microsoft VDI traditionally, if we think of RDS. So the connection broker service manager uses the connections to virtual desktop and the remote apps. It provides like load balancing if you have multiple session hosts. So when someone connects, that deals with which session hosts are going to be connected to. And again, traditionally in on-premises VDI solutions, you have to manage that, but because it's hosted in Microsoft, again, WVD takes that management away. So again, massive reducing in overhead. And again, I touched on it, what's managed by Microsoft, and I mentioned some of the services there, the connection broker, the web access, the gateway, they're all kind of managed by Microsoft. But what is managed by the client or us as the administrators? So we think of what I like to call watering and feeding the sort of service. So we're talking about image patching, making sure the session hosts are patched, making sure we back them up, making sure we secure them. And again, if you look at the sort of Microsoft Azure's responsibility model, it's similar to that in the IaaS section, because WVD is essentially infrastructure as a service. So where as a client or as the end user, the end admin, we still need to make sure we secure WVD. We need to make sure that we Windows patching, we make sure we need to do that. And also backup and monitoring is something we're as the end user in charge of. So one of the first WVD features that I just want to touch on is host pools. So essentially a host pool is a collection of virtual machines. So you can have multiple host pools per WVD tenancy. And there are different types of host pools as well. So the two different types of host pools are pooled or personal. Excuse me, I was coughing. Just to explain what pooled and personal are. So with a pooled host pool, that is essentially the users sharing the resources. So you could have, for example, 10 session hosts within a host pool. So a session host is just a VM. You could have 10 of those session hosts in one host pool configured for pooled access. And essentially any user that connects, it'll just share the resources. So it'll randomly connect, depending on what load balancing algorithm you have, it'll randomly connect to a specific VM. Doesn't matter. There's no sort of you'll never connect to the same VM more than once probably. So it's like a round robin sort of connection. Whereas a personal host pool, that is almost the opposite. So if you have 10 session hosts within your host pool, a user will be assigned to a specific session host, and they will always connect to that session host. So it's almost like their individual personal desktop. So again, different use cases for the sort of different host pools that you will need, but the two sort of host pools you can have are pooled or personal. So just some prerequisites for host pools that I wanted to touch on. Need to have a network in Azure, like any sort of compute resource with virtual machines. You need to have a network, so a VNet and some subnets. WVD is no different to any sort of virtual machine. You need to make sure you have the equivalent network with the equivalent subnets and kind of IP range. A domain. So because they are virtual machines, you need to domain join them. So the two options you have there are you could integrate it with Active Directory on premises, which would need a site-to-site VPN, or you could host a virtual machine in Azure with a domain controller on it. Or the third option is actually Azure AD Domain Services. So Azure AD Domain Services is the domain controller as a service, essentially, for Microsoft. It's hosted domain controller. So in the back end, it's basically two domain controllers, and you, as the admin, you get two IP addresses within your subnet that you've provisioned it on. So you need to have some sort of domain controller where you can domain join your virtual machines, essentially. A virtual machine image is another prerequisite. So if you think about traditional laptops on premises, you have maybe a golden image. So it's a pre-prepared image that you install all your business applications on, fully patched, and then you sysprep it. It's the same for WVD. You need to, you prepare an image. You could have line of business applications on it, fully sysprep, or fully update it, patch it with the latest updates, and then you sysprep it. Once you've sysprepped it, you can capture it, and every time you want to create a new image, you can just you can snapshot that disk, and again, when you want to do a new image, just build on top of that disk. So again, you need three sort of prerequisites: network, domain, and virtual machine image. So the second WVD feature I want to look at was application groups. So application groups are a collection of remote applications that you can present to a user or a group of users. So again, you can manage all that through Azure AD if you want to do it to groups. So you could have, if you have some sales applications and you only want the sales team to access those, you only give the sales group access to those applications. So if someone from the finance team logs in, they won't see those applications because they don't have access to it. So there are two types of application groups, desktop or remote app. So the desktop application group is what you'd think. It's for your Windows session, your Windows desktop session. So again, if you think about traditional RDS on premises, you used to publish an application for your RDS for your remote desktop. That's equivalent of what the desktop application group is. And the remote app one, again, it's for publishing your applications. So there are different type of applications as well that you can actually provision. So if we look at sorry, there's a fly on my monitor. It's so annoying. The different type of applications you can publish as well. So you can publish from the start menu, so of your golden image. So again, if you have, say, you've got a user who's maybe an engineer who's always on the road, doesn't need access to a Windows image fully, don't need a Windows desktop. They just need email. So what you'll do is you'll give them access to the Outlook app, and you can publish that from the start menu of your golden image. The other option is you can put a specific file path. So again, from your image, if you've got a file path of an executable that you've installed on the image, you can point to that and publish that, again, giving a group or a user access to that specific app. Finally, one of the newer sort of application publishing services in WVD is MSIX. So this is a new app package format that provides a modern app packaging experience for Windows applications. So the MSIX package format, it preserves the existing application packages, the functionality, and it enables new modern deployment features for Win32, WPF, and Windows Forms applications. So with the MSIX app attach, essentially what you do is you provision some storage, normally Azure files, and you store the application data within that Azure file share. And then essentially the WVD image attaches to that application. Again, you can configure that through WVD, through the GUI and we'll have a look at that towards the end in the demo. So the third feature that I wanted to look at was workspaces. So a workspace is a logical grouping of application groups in Windows Virtual Desktop. So each Windows Virtual Desktop application group must be associated with a workspace for users to see the remote apps and the remote desktops. So you have at least one workspace per WVD tenancy. You can have multiple, but you have to have at least one workspace in there. You can't not have one, if that makes sense. So another feature I wanted to discuss was FSLogics. Now, FSLogics has been around for a while, so you can integrate it with other VDI platforms, including RDS, Citrix, and I believe VMware Horizon as well. So FSLogics isn't specific to WVD, but it is an important part of it. So the Windows Virtual Desktop service recommends FSLogics profiles for containers of the user profile solution. So essentially, if you remember traditionally roaming profiles, I don't know about anyone else, but they used to be such a pain to manage. And they cause so many issues with slow logon times traditionally. Going back to my support days now, where I used to have users complain, they used to have like 50 gig profiles, and then they used to complain when the slow logon times. FSLogics improves the login process and login speeds and the whole user experience with Windows Virtual Desktop. It does it through essentially profile containers. So FSLogics is designed to run profiles in remote computing environments, such as Windows Virtual Desktop. It stores a complete user profile in a single container. One of the massive positives for me for FSLogics is that the Azure AD DS integration. So you can essentially use your Azure AD permissions and give users access to their user profile. So all the sort of permissions can be managed through Azure AD groups. So yeah, the Azure AD DS integration is quite big. You can also integrate it with an on-premises domain controller as well. So that is also supported. So it's not just Azure AD domain services, it also support for Azure AD on-premises as well. But again, you would need sort of to have that integration, that hybrid integration. So just some other sort of FSLogic features which maybe aren't as relevant to WVD, but just things I wanted to touch on. You can use it for Office containerization, for application masking, and for Java version control as well. So these are all additional FSLogic features that may come in handy and may come in use. So now we've looked at the sort of overview of what WVD is. We've looked at some of what I feel are key features. What I just want to touch on now is sort of a typical enterprise architecture of WVD. So you start off with Azure Active Directory. Any sort of cloud service, be it SaaS, PaaS, or IaaS, it all sits on top of the identity, which is Azure AD Directory in this case. And WVD is no different. And then what we have is we have our Windows Virtual Desktop backend. So I discussed earlier about the management aspect of it and the reduced management. So these are all the services that you don't see. So the web access, the gateway, the broker, they then sit on top of Active Directory, Azure Active Directory, should I say. And then we have our virtual network and our subscription. And all our infrastructure is obviously going to sit within that. And then on the left here, we have our on-premises sort of network where we have some applications. We'll have an Azure AD Connect server syncing object IDs from on-premises AD up to Azure AD. We'll also have a network gateway, like a firewall or something like that. Then we have a gateway subnet provisioned in Azure. So this is going to have our VPN connection, and we have a DMZ subnet as well. Again, for sort of best practice security, we have that DMZ subnet for our network virtual appliance. You might have like a virtual firewall of some sort. And then you have a choice, and you can either use an express route, or you can just do a traditional IPsec VPN, and you would have that connecting your on-premises to. Ooh, bit of feedback. There we go. We'll have that VPN connection to integrate with that on-premises applications and services there. And here, like I mentioned, we have Azure AD Domain Services subnet as well. Now, when I'm speaking to clients around Windows Virtual Desktop, there's always that choice of, Active Directory on premises or Active Directory Domain Services. Now, I've had it where I've had some clients who have a massive reliance on group policy. So that's obviously integrated with a domain controller on premises. So for those sort of clients, I can understand why integrating it with Active Directory on premises is a must. But for those clients where they don't have that reliance, I always try and steer them towards Azure AD Domain Services, because essentially it is the same it is a domain controller as a service. And the reason why is because of the VPN. That is a single point of failure. So if you domain join your your session host to your on-premises domain controller, if your VPN fails, then your sessions can't authenticate. Essentially, you've lost your authentication. Your users can't log in. So using Azure AD Domain Services, because it's got, obviously it's hosted in Azure, you've got essentially 2 domain controllers. It's got higher reliability, failover, all those good things you get with hosting in Microsoft. It mitigates that risk of your VPN failing. So if I can, I normally try and steer my customers towards Azure AD Domain Services rather than AD on premises for that kind of reason. So that's why I've put Azure AD Domain Services in there. So the VPN is really to integrate applications, legacy apps that we have on premises. And here we have our multi-session host pools. Now you'll notice there's different workloads here. We've got workload 1, 2, 3, and 4. And what those workloads are for are different use cases. So if we think of traditional admin staff, maybe a PA or a secretary, they use more word processing, Office apps. They're not going to use any heavy duty sort of applications. So what you can do is you can create a separate host pool for them with less powerful sized virtual machines. So again, what you're doing is you're rather than giving everybody large sized virtual machines within Azure, you're giving that group of people smaller virtual machines because that's what all they require. And again, workload 2 could be maybe some of your users that use like an architect uses CAD or Revit, more powerful, need more memory and more CPU. You can give those set of users, put them in a different workload and provision them with host pool that has bigger virtual machines. What this is going to let you do is segregate your workload, but also allow you to minimize cost, because you're going to have different people with different reliances on compute and resources. So why give everybody one size when you can separate them into different workloads? And rather than giving everybody, even if you're an admin person, giving them a large VM, wastes a lot of money because they're not going to use that compute. So that's why I've kind of got separate host pools for different workloads. And then we have our Azure files. Now, again, because this is my dream enterprise solution, I've gone with NetApp Azure files, which are fully supported with WVD. So again, NetApp is obviously an enterprise solution as far as storage goes. And the Azure NetApp files I've got for my FSLogics profiles. And again, it's just going to allow us to scale up to we're talking hundreds and thousands of user use case here, but it just gives us that enterprise storage for those user profiles. So that's why I've kind of put that in there. But again, you could use plain simple Azure files. And then we've got some published applications. Now these could be, like I said, these could be just basic Office, or they could be line of business applications. Or again, the application has to support being able to be published. There might be some legacy apps that don't support it. So again, you might need to think about how you would provision those. Are you going to leave those on the image, or are you going to try and migrate those to the cloud, or are you going to leave them on premises on the left-hand side there and just have that VPN? And then I'm not sure if you can see that should say auto-scaling. So again, here we have just another Azure resource as part of the ecosystem that integrates with WVD. So the auto scaling is going to allow us to automatically scale in and out. So again, depending on the amount of resources we're using, you can reduce the number of VMs in your host pools. Or again, if you've got a large increase in traffic, you could increase the number of virtual machines. And again, with the automation and the auto scaling, it's going to help us minimize costs. So from a commercial perspective. And then again, we have the cloud monitoring tool there, Azure Monitor and Log Analytics, so we can monitor our WVD usage again, and pull out reports for how the usage around the virtual machines. Again, Security Center can fully integrate with it as well, so we've got that in there. And from a security perspective, being able to monitor, make sure we're not, being able to remediate, proactively remediate any security issues, and also being able to look at our security footprint using the security score. Are we protecting our environment, as the WVD environment, as much as we can? And then I'll give you recommendations on top of that. Finally, the image gallery. So the image gallery is going to allow us to control our image versioning, and allow us to, again, for what I tend to do is with my clients is normally on every 3 months upgrade the image. That doesn't mean that you can't patch it. You can still have a patch schedule and use Windows Update for Business or whatever to keep patching the Windows 10 VMs. But when you're talking about feature updates, so I think is it 21? I can't remember what version of Windows 10 is the latest at the moment, but the last one I can remember is 20H2. But when the next version comes out, you can put together a process of updating the image rather than patching it with such a big up. Especially if you have like double-figure virtual machines in your host pools, 20, 30, trying to patch those with a feature update could be quite painful and time-consuming. So making sure you have sort of an image update policy in place is very important. You can use the image gallery for that. I suppose that the most important bit here is external endpoints. So that's your end user sat anywhere in the world. As long as they've got an internet connection, they can connect in. And again, it's fully supported through the Azure MFA. So MFA and conditional access. You can use to protect your identities that are connecting to WVD. With the pandemic, 18 months has it been now? We, look at this. We're doing a virtual event because of the pandemic. WVD is only a year old, just over a year old, but it's probably the biggest, most quickest growing service I can remember in Azure. And one of the main reasons is because of the pandemic. My claim to fame is I did the 3rd ever UK-wide deployment of WVD back in April 2020, and that was for an NHS trust within the UK. For those who don't, NHS is our National Health Service, and yeah, I did like a 300 user deployment. And again, because it was just before the UK went into lockdown, we had to get it done. I had 2 weeks essentially to deploy it. And get it all done and dusted. So it was very tight timelines. But again, what WVD has allowed, sorry, getting back to my point, what WVD has allowed is for users to connect from anywhere, from any device. So the tool that you use to connect in, you can use a web browser, as I mentioned, HTML5, it supports HTML5, but there's also an application you can download from Microsoft's website, totally free, but that supports Windows, Android, iOS and macOS as well. So you can essentially from any device that you've got, you can connect to WVD. So again, that remote working, sort of working from anywhere, or what Microsoft like to call the modern workplace, it's fully basically designed for that. So again, that's why MFA and conditional access are even more important. Have any questions at all at the moment, or shall I just continue?
There are 2 questions, in fact.
I'll do a quick break and answer some of the questions if that's all right, just to break it up a bit.
Sure. You want me to ask now, or you want to continue?
Yeah, I've got the chat up. Do you get a price break if you reserve a certain number of instances or minimum pool size? Okay, I see. I don't believe reserved instances are supported with WVD, if that's what you mean. But no, you don't get a sort of price break. Again, the ways to get around, I suppose, the costing is stuff like auto shutdown and auto startup. So if you're I believe we can leverage reservations. Maybe I'm wrong then. I don't think you can. I've not seen that use case yet where someone's used a reserved instance. What I have seen and what I have done is so say you've got a business or a client that's 9 to 5 essentially, business hours. What we tend to do in those scenarios is we shut down the virtual machines, and not just shut them down, but actually stop them. So again, you can automate that through Microsoft, through Azure Automate. So you automatically shut them down, and then say an hour after the business is closed, and then you start them up again maybe an hour before. And what that does, again, because they're in a stop state, that keeps the cost down. You know what, I will take a closer look at that. I've not seen the reserve instance use case, if I'm honest with you, but that's a very good question.
And don't go with my comment. It was just a guess. I thought since under the hood it's virtual machine, so possibly reservations might work. So I guess ignore my comment on Teams.
Yeah, so in the deployment of it, there's no thing for because you provision the virtual machines when you're provisioning when you create the host pool. That's where it provisions the virtual machines. There's no choice for reserve instance. So, but you know what? That is a really good point. That would be a good way of keeping costs down if it was supported. But yeah, no, good question. I don't believe it is, but I will confirm it. So can WVD serve as an effective alternative for enforcing company security policies compared to enrolling everyone's devices in Endpoint Manager and pushing out policies? So yeah, again, there's been some recent integration with Endpoint Manager. So you serve as an effective alternative for enforcing company security. I'm trying to understand what that question means. So again, you can integrate it with group policy and Intune. You do have to enroll them. You have to do the hybrid enroll. So you have to domain join them and enroll them into Azure AD. Try to understand what that question means. Sorry. So can WVD serve as an effective alternative for enforcing company security? Enrolling devices in Microsoft Endpoint Manager and pushing out policies. Again, you would still push out policies either through group policy or Intune anyway to WVD, your WVD session host, I suppose. Escape and own devices of employees use WVD. Do you mean personal devices, Lois? Do you mean personal devices? You can unmute if you want, I don't mind. Okay, right, yes, I get it now. Yes, 100%. So again, I've had that use case before. So people bring their own devices or use their own devices. In that case, what you do is you make sure they do multi-factor authentication, and you ensure that through conditional access they can't download any data or anything onto their personal device from WVD. But yeah, exactly. Rather than enrolling personal devices, you could just make sure you enforce MFA, so they have to do that second authentication, and then yeah, fully access it and apply your policies to WVD rather than people's personal devices. Yeah, 100%. That again, that's another use case for the pandemic. People using their own devices, and you know, WVD has allowed clients to not give people laptops or open up the security so people can access data from their own personal devices. So does that answer your question? I'll tell that. I'll guess it does. Okay. Yeah. Okay. Excellent. Good. Okay. Well, I thought it'd be nice just to break up the presentation a little bit because I've been talking a lot. So I'll move on to go back to the presentation, and then I'll tackle any other questions later. So okay, so that was the architecture that I want to go over. This is kind of what an enterprise architecture might look like with WVD, and so as you can see, there's all the ecosystem integrating with it there. So it's not just a simple VDI solution, and that's the beauty of WVD for me. It's no different to Citrix, VMware Horizon, or RDS, but the beauty of it is how you can integrate it with the rest of Azure's ecosystem. For me, that's what I try and tell my customers. So some WVD use cases. So again, the question there touched nicely on one of them, but most demand for enterprise virtual desktop solutions tend to come from these sort of areas. So security and regulations. So you might have security and regulation applications like financial services, healthcare, and government. A lot of the conversations the deployments I've done have been mainly in healthcare, and a lot of the conversations that I'm having are with government agencies within the UK, and they're looking at WVD because of the security of it, and because obviously there's more of a use for remote working now as well. The elastic workforce, so the needs for like remote working, mergers, acquisitions, short-term employees is another one, in contractors. If you have somebody who's going to be working with you for say 3 to 6 months, having to provision them a laptop and build that laptop and secure it, manage it, can be quite a pain. And for 3 to 6 months, then you need to redo it all, re-image it all for the next person who's going to be there short term. What WVD allows you to do is just provision their AD account, or give them permissions, and then just provision a session host for them, or just add them to the existing host pool. So that's quite a popular use case, the elastic workforce, and having for employees or short-term employees, contractors, or even partner access. So if you're a company that has partners that you integrate with and you share data with, and they need access to your systems, you need access to their systems, WVD can be a really good solution for that. Because then you can control the sort of security they have as well. Oh, trigger finger. BYOD. So as the question already answered, was a perfect example. Specific employers like to bring their own devices, and then and mobile users, call centers, and branch workers. WVD allows you to give these users with their own device access to the infrastructure, and again, you can secure that up with things like multi-factor authentication and conditional access. And as we mentioned earlier when we were discussing it, that then allows you to you don't have to manage personal devices or enroll them. So again, it reduces the management overhead as well for BYOD. The final use case I just wanted to touch on was specialized workloads like design, engineering, legacy apps, and like software development testing. For sort of developers, it's quite a good use case, because again, they can have their own sort of personal desktop, quite a powerful personal desktop as well. So rather than giving them like a big hefty laptop, because obviously developers they use quite resource intensive tools, you can give them a specialized personal desktop within WVD, and when they're not using it, just power it down, shut it, so stop it. So you're keeping that cost down, and rather than giving them a £3,000-4,000 or dollar, should I say, laptop, you're keeping the cost down by giving them access to it while they're working. When they're not working, powering it down. So again, these are the sort of use cases that I've dealt with since I've been working with WVD, which was about a year ago. So demo time. What I'll do is I'll quickly change my screen, and I just want to go through the portal really and show you all how it looks from the Azure perspective. Excuse me, I'm just going to take a sip of water as well. Can you see that? That should be the Azure portal.
Yes.
Excellent, thank you. So this is you've all probably seen this. If you work within Microsoft Azure, you've all seen this. There's nothing new here. So this is so when Windows Virtual Desktop first got launched, it was PowerShell management only. So the first deployment I did was through PowerShell. I think back now and I think how painful it was, but because the GUI is so much more easier. But that's how it was in its first for the spring, they call it the spring version, I think they called it, and then there came the fall version, which they integrated with the GUI. But yeah, that was my first deployment I ever did through PowerShell, which was, look back now, it's quite fun actually. So here we have the overview. This is like your dashboard, and straight away you can see we can create a host pool there. Just quickly, I am just going to touch on a few things before I go into Windows Virtual Desktop. I've got my network set up here. I've got my main VNet where my session hosts sit. And what I've had to do is I had to create a separate VNet for my Azure AD Domain Services tenant instance, because on my main VNet here, I have a domain controller. And again, it's a bit out of scope for this presentation, but you can't have an Azure AD Domain Services instance on the same VNet as a domain controller, because technically they're the same domain, but they have no sort of connection as far as your domain goes. They both sync with Azure AD, but separately. So I had to separate those. So I've got my virtual network here, and just to show you the DNS servers, that's my domain controller IP address. So when my session hosts domain join, they'll domain join to my VM that has Active Directory domain services on it, or Azure as Active Directory on it. Yeah, sorry. So just to show you, I've got my network pre-provisioned. I've got my domain controller as well. So that's my virtual machine domain controller there. So I mentioned just going through the prerequisites for WVD, which I mentioned in the session earlier. And here I have my storage account. So my storage account has my Azure file share for my profiles. And I already have some test. I'm a bit of a comic book geek, so I've got Bruce Wayne, I've got Clark Kent. I don't even know why I named them that. I actually prefer Marvel, but I've got 2 DC characters in there, so it's a bit strange. But so go back to Windows Virtual Desktop. So this is the service within, this is the GUI within Microsoft Azure. So straight away, we've got access to some documentation here that you can look at. What I want to do is I'm just going to jump straight into the host pool. So here's one I configured earlier. Now, just to give a bit of a couple of points I want to make here. Location. Now, that is the location of the metadata of my Windows Virtual Desktop service. Now, at present, the metadata, I believe, recently does have now European storage or North European storage, but traditionally it was only ever available. The storage for the metadata was only available in the US. So in my case, I provisioned it in West US. Now, this isn't where my virtual machine sits or any of my compute resources. It is literally just the metadata of my Windows Virtual Desktop. And here you can see it's a pooled resource. And I've got my subscription there. Now, this is an important bit here, the load balancing. What we have is we have 2 load balancing algorithms with pooled host pools. You have breadth first or you have depth first. Breadth first is more equivalent to if you think of round robin. So when a user connects, they get randomly connected to any available session host. There's no rhyme or rhythm to it. Okay. Doesn't matter if you've got a session host that is using more CPU because it's got more users logged onto it. It's just random. Now the second one, load balancing algorithm, is depth first. Now this is a bit more different. So what depth first does is, say you've got 5 session hosts. It will connect all. So when users connect, it will connect them all to one session host up until it gets to a specific level. Now you can set that level, say 80% CPU and memory usage. Once it hits that threshold, it will then start logging people on to the next session host. So essentially, it lets you fill up a session host with the resource and then move on to the second one, and the third, and then fourth, and so on. Now, the pros or the benefit of depth first is a commercial aspect. It can keep costs down, because essentially what you can do is just provision one session host in your host pool, and then have an automation script in the back end that when that session host hits 70 or 80% CPU and memory usage, a new one is provisioned. So again, and it only provisions it when you need it. So again, depth first is normally used in environments where they're more commercially aware and they want to try and keep costs down. So I hope that explains the difference between the 2 load balancing algorithms. Now here we've gone into our host pool. We can just look at some of the details here. So again, a bit of information, the resource group, location of the metadata, my subscription. This is actually my company demo one. Host pool type, assignment type is blank because it's a host pool, is pooled, it's just random. And that's the size of my virtual. So again, in any host pool, the VMs can only have one standard size. So you can't provision different size VMs in the same host pool, if that makes sense. And if we go back to the diagram that I showed earlier, the architecture, that's why I had separate workloads, because each workload had a specific size virtual machine to it. So in this case, we've gone for the B4MS, which is 4 CPUs and 16 gig of RAM. We've got a premium SSD disk. Again, here on the left-hand side, we can look at the access control, which is kind of standard sort of menu here. What's more specific to WVD is when we get to the RDP properties. So quickly, how much time do I have? Do I have an hour, or do I have just want to check?
You have roughly around 40 minutes.
Okay. Well, I'm probably going to be about another 10, 15 or so. So will that be all right? Will you be able to?
I think that's all right.
Okay, cool. Sorry. I'll continue. Yeah, so the settings, we'll look at RDP properties. So this is more specific to WVD. And what we can do here, we've got different options here. So this is where we can do different connection information. So as I said, credential security support. You have the option to use cred SSP or to not use it. And here you can put alternative shell commands. So you can specify a program to be started automatically when you connect to the remote computer. So that could be, you might want to start the intranet, for your organization when people log straight on. So again, you've got options. You can launch specific applications through the shell. Again, this KDC proxy name, this is optional. You can enter a fully qualified domain name for a desired proxy. If we go to session behavior, this is more, if you think of traditional RDS on premises, where you can specify the reconnection behavior. So does a client automatically reconnect or not if they get disconnected, or if you have a stale session? The bandwidth auto detect, again, should it use the auto detect network bandwidth or not? The same with the net. Again, these are all sort of options that you traditionally had in RDS on premises. Compression for your RD bulk compression, video playback option there as well. And again, device redirection, again, quite a standard sort of RDS. A lot of it, again, it's based on RDS. Essentially, the back end, this is probably an RDS server. Do you know what I mean? So it's based around a lot of the features you used to get on RDS on premises. So your microphone redirection, because Microsoft Teams fully supports WVD as well. So some of this is quite important because you need to be able to redirect your audio, so your microphone, your video, your audio through to your WVD instance from your device, especially if you're using Microsoft Teams. So these are quite important, making sure you redirect correctly. Again, you've got your ports, your USB redirection, your camera redirection, clipboard, smart card redirection if you use smart card. Again, a lot of the health services in the UK use smart cards. So this is quite an important feature to be able to redirect smart cards for the health services in the UK. So we've used this quite a bit in some of the deployments I've done. You can manage display settings as well. And then we've got advanced where. So this is where you can actually put in a almost like a command. And again, there's essentially you can set custom RDP properties. If you want multi-monitor or audio redirection, you can actually do custom properties here that might not be available within these settings here. Yeah, this is just some of the properties of the host pool. So the subscription ID, the location of the metadata again. Is it a pooled or personal? Is it a personal desktop? In our case, it's not. Do you want to start the VM on connect? So again, if it's powered down when someone's trying to connect, do you want to start the VM? And again, just again, that shows the load balance algorithm, which we could technically change that if we wanted to. And again, you can specify the maximum session limit here. So the maximum number of users that have concurrent sessions. So I'll just set this to 5, but if you've sized your VM appropriately so it can handle up to maybe 10 or 15 users, then by all means you can change that. And here we get further down into managing our application groups. So for me, I've got 2 application groups. I've got a desktop one. I've got a remote app one. Remember, I mentioned both of these in the presentation earlier. So here I've got 5 applications. So again, we've gone into it. And then if we look at applications, I've just done the Win32 Office ones for me. So I've just kept it simple, just to show that the premise of publishing applications. But what I've done is I've assigned these to you can assign these to specific people. So I could assign this to a group of users. So when those users log in through the web or through the client, when they log in, they'll just see those applications. They won't see the desktop unless I give them access to this desktop application group. And again, this is just for my Windows session desktop. Go to applications, you'll see it's got the session desktop there. And again, I can assign that to specific groups or people, and only when they log on, they will see that. So it's a good way of, the assignments is a good way of locking down who can have access to what applications or session hosts. So I mentioned MSIX packages. This is where you would essentially provision your MSIX packages. So I've not got any provisioned. I don't have anything that I can set up either. So okay, I think I've powered down my session hosts. Yeah, they're all powered down at the moment. I'm trying to keep costs down as well. But this is where you can manage your session hosts. So so before I click on there, what you can actually do is, if you remember on traditional RDS, you could have it where you can especially when you're patching or updating, you can stop any new users from logging in. That's called drain mode within WVD. So if I was to click all these, I could enable drain mode, and once that says on, if these were powered on, which they're not at the moment, but if they were powered on, that would stop any new logons. So when you're, sorry, excuse me, I should clean my nose. I'm not used to being up this late, you see. So if with drain mode on, it means that no new users can log in. Existing users would stay logged in, and they could happily work away, even while you're updating the image. So when you update the image, you'll just add new virtual machines with your updated image. And then once those users have logged off, the next time they log in, they will log into the new image virtual machines rather than these, and you can remove these from the host pool then, and even delete the VMs because they've got the old image on. So I better take these off of drain mode in case I need them at some other point. So we actually click on the virtual here. So let's just imagine this was live. It would show you all the users that are logged into this specific session host. So again, you have the option here. You can send them a message, or you can, if you're really mean, you can just log them off. But again, it gives us information around the size, status. The last time it was on, so this was back on in almost a month ago since I powered these down. Wow. So again, you can even remove the session host from the host pool if you wanted to. So that's what some of the settings you can do within the session host. Again, down here, we've got some of the monitoring, diagnostics, and automation that we can do. Went through these application groups earlier when I looked at the host pool. So this is my one for my desktop, and that's my remote apps. And again, if I just quickly just click create a new. No, I said I won't do any live demos, but I couldn't help myself. So it's my host pool, host pool 01. Let's just call it test group. So we're going to do a remote app. Oh, can't be any gaps. Got an excuse if I make any mistakes, and that's the fact that it's nearly 1 in the morning. So we click on next here. So this is the application. So because my virtual machine is not powered off, essentially what you could do is you'd get a choice of the type of application, be it MSIX app attach or start menu or file path, and then you could specify the actual applications. My VMs are powered off, and it might take a few minutes just to power them on. Bear with me a second, I'll quickly do that. Won't mind just showing you a bit of an example. It doesn't take long to power them on, does it? I don't think. Okay, so while the powering on, I'll go back to some of the other aspects. So this is a workspace that I mentioned. You have to have at least one workspace as part of your WVD tenancy, you can't not have one. And again, here you can manage your, there's more than one way to get to certain aspects. There's more than one way to get to application groups. There's more than one way to get to your session hosts. And here we're back to where the application groups were. See if it'll let me deploy this now. Sorry. No, application group. Oh. No, it's not going to let me do it. But yeah, my virtual machines aren't powered on in time. You get the gist. You've got different options to essentially different ways you can deploy applications is what I want to try and show you. Apologies, it's not working. But that's essentially what I want to show you in my demo. Just some of the services and how they look within WVD. So I will. That is actually the end of my session. That's pretty much it.
Shabaz, I think there were few.
No parallel port redirection. I would hope not. I don't think there is. No, I don't think there is. Unfortunately, might have to request that from the Microsoft WVD team. You can request the parallel port redirection, I'm sure. Do you automate the shutdown and start with Azure Automate? I believe Azure Automate is one way you can do it. I think it's got some supporting for. I've done it through Azure Automate, to be honest, but I think there's more supports come for auto shutdown now. So yeah, when I've done it before, it's through Azure Automate. Would it be possible to integrate the user cost center as one of the tags when they indicate a session host? Be for cost reports purposes, which will break down the cost center department level throughout the organization. Again, because it's all compute resources, you can set any tags you want on them. So if I just go, yeah, because of VMs, you can set any tag on. So if you want to do it through the cost center, they are just virtual machines, so treat them as virtual machines essentially. So like if you tag your virtual machines, existing virtual machines as cost centers, you can do the same here. So when you do go into like your virtual machines section of Azure, you can see them all there automatically. I'll be honest, I've never done that. I've never done the tagging for the cost center automatically, so I don't know. I can always find out though, and come back to you. That's all right. Sorry, I can't tell off the top of my head, I'm afraid.
No worries, Shabaz. And if anyone else has any questions, feel free to unmute yourself. You can ask Shabaz directly now. I guess not. With that, on behalf of the user group, Shabaz, I would like to thank you so much once again for taking time out. I know it's midnight for you. It's getting late for you. So
no problem.
I'll go ahead and stop the recording, and then we'll have refill.